Have you ever found yourself wondering how societies actually transform over time? Or why some groups consistently seem to hold more influence or power than others, even when it's not immediately obvious?
Yeah, those are fundamental questions.
Well, imagine having a special set of intellectual lenses, sort of like glasses, that allow you to see these hidden dynamics at play.
That's a good way to put it.
So today we're taking a deep dive into two fascinating sets of sources that'll give us exactly that kind of perspective. We'll start by exploring the foundational work of a really key figure in Indian sociology, M.N. Srinivas.
Mhm.
He literally gave us some of the most essential lenses to understand Indian society. Then we'll immediately put those lenses to work. We'll look at a very contemporary case study, the Patidar community in Western India.
Right, and see how they're navigating some really modern challenges like global migration and deeply shifting values.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack Srinivas's core ideas and then see how powerfully they still resonate, how they play out in real life even decades later. Get ready for some insightful connections.
It really is remarkable. Srinivas's work, it's deeply rooted in its specific time and place, but it still offers such a robust framework for understanding the complex social shifts we see today. He was a true trailblazer in how we study Indian society.
Absolutely. So let's start by really getting a handle on the man himself. M.N. Srinivas, born 1916, a towering figure in Indian social anthropology.
He really was. Trained by G.S. Ghurye, another major figure.
But what truly set Srinivas apart was his passion for immersing himself in the field, actually living among the people he studied.
That fieldwork element was crucial. He was profoundly shaped by anthropologists like Radcliffe-Brown, who focused on structure and function, and Malinowski, the champion of that immersive fieldwork.
And here's a story that just speaks volumes about his dedication. While he was at Stanford in the U.S., his field notes, all this invaluable work, were lost in a dormitory fire. Tragic.
Unbelievable. All that work.
But incredibly, instead of giving up, he managed to reconstruct his masterpiece, Remembered Village, almost entirely from memory. He published it in 1976. What does that tell you about his commitment?
That commitment, to recreate research like that from memory, it really shows his deep immersion. And it vividly illustrates his belief in what he called the field view, which he really contrasted with the book view.
Right. These two approaches are absolutely central to how he thought. So the book view, often called Indology, is about getting knowledge purely from old texts, sacred texts, historical books.
Kind of a top-down perspective, you could say.
Yeah, exactly. Learning about religion, caste, family, villages, but only through what was written down often centuries ago. Why do you think Srinivas felt that approach just wasn't enough?
Well, he argued that texts often give you an idealized version, right? How things should be, maybe, rather than the messy, lived reality. It's an incomplete picture.
Makes sense.
He believed, he argued, that to truly grasp the nativity, the authentic day-to-day life, especially in rural India, you had to be there. You had to experience it firsthand.
And that's precisely what led him to champion his preferred method, the field view, empirical study.
Getting knowledge directly through fieldwork, living in a community, observing over time.
Yeah.
It's the bottom-up view.
He was convinced this was essential to capture the true dynamic reality. So if you were trying to understand a community, which approach seems like it would give you a more complete picture, and why?
Oh, the field view, definitely. It lets you unclear out nuances, the informal stuff, things a textbook might completely miss. For instance, Srinivas famously challenged that common idea that Indian villages were these isolated, self-sufficient little republics.
Right, that old myth.
Yeah. His fieldwork showed villages were never truly self-contained. They were always deeply connected to the wider region, economically, socially, politically.
How might knowing that change your understanding of a traditional village?
It suggests they were far more dynamic and interconnected than we might assume from just reading old texts.
That's a huge shift in perspective. Okay, so we understand how he observed society. Now let's look at how he understood something even more fundamental, how society changes. And his first big idea there was Sanskritization. What exactly is that?
Sanskritization. It's fascinating. It's not just imitation. It's a process where a caste group, usually one considered lower, tries to raise its social standing.
Yeah.
By adopting the customs, the rituals, the whole way of life of a caste traditionally seen as higher, those twice-born castes.
So it's like adopting a new social playbook to climb the ladder. Can you give some examples?
Exactly. It's strategic. Maybe changing diets, like going from non-vegetarian to vegetarian, or shifting occupations. This stuff often takes a generation or two. It's not instant.
And the outcome.
The key thing is it results in a positional change.
Yeah.
The group moves up within the existing caste system, but the system itself, the structure, doesn't disappear.
Okay, so the hierarchy remains.
Right. And it can lead to other shifts, too. Sometimes women lose some cultural autonomy. Maybe a move towards joint families, stronger caste organization within that group. And, better transport and communication actually sped this process up.
Any real-world examples?
Sure. Think of the Rajwars, a scheduled caste in Bihar. They started claiming to be Rajmanshi Kshatriya. It's a clear attempt at upward mobility through Sanskritization. Can you think of examples, maybe in your own society, where groups adopt certain behaviors to gain status?
It makes you think. Now, alongside Sanskritization, Srinivas also talked about Westernization. What did he mean by that?
Westernization described the huge cultural and institutional changes in India because of British colonial rule. This is more of a top-down influence, unlike Sanskritization.
And the impact was massive, right? Changes in technology, institutions, ideology, basic beliefs.
Absolutely. Think about bringing in a scientific approach, new ideas like individualism, equality, rationalism, liberalism, plus new schools, a whole new political culture.
Key effect.
Well, it introduced some flexibility into the rigid caste system. Sometimes it led to joint families breaking down. It also sparked social reforms, like abolishing sati.
Which raises a good question. How might Westernization have both positive and negative impacts? It's rarely just one thing, is it?
Never simple. It's always complex, often contradictory.
Okay. And then there's secularization. Srinivas thought British rule kicked this off too, and it grew stronger with more travel, cities growing, modern education.
Yeah, and a key difference here. Unlike Sanskritization, which was about specific groups, secularization affected pretty much all Indians. Its core feature was the rise of rationalism, meaning a shift away from purely traditional or religious views towards ideas based on reason, on logic.
Yeah.
How might rely more on rationalism change how people live daily life compared to just following tradition?
That's a fundamental shift. Okay, let's dig into some of his ideas about social dynamics, about power. He talked about the dominant caste. What defines that?
A dominant caste, as Srinivas saw it, isn't always the highest in ritual status. It's a caste that has a combination of strengths. Numbers, basically being numerous in a village or area.
Okay, numbers count.
Big time. Plus economic power, usually through owning a lot of land, political power, influence, and yeah, high place in the local hierarchy, but that could follow the other strengths.
What's surprising is that even a ritually lower caste could become dominant if it had these other things.
Exactly. He saw this in Rampura village in Mysore. The peasants there, ritually below Brahmins, were actually dominant.
Why?
They owned most of the land, they have the numbers, they had political pull. So basically, other castes in the village ended up serving them or depending on them. It makes you wonder, why is it that economic and political power can sometimes trump traditional social rank?
It really highlights the real politic of village life.
Yeah.
And speaking of politics and power, Srinivas coined the term vote bank. What did that mean originally?
Initially, it was pretty literal. It meant a powerful village leader, a big shot, who could basically guarantee the votes of his village or his caste group for a certain politician.
Like delivering a block of votes.
Exactly. Leveraging group loyalty for political gain.
But the meaning expanded over time, didn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. It came to mean the general tendency for people to vote collectively, in groups or herds, as he put it.
Based on what?
Could be caste, class, language, religion, even shared interests. He mentioned rifle-owning hunters in America as an example, a group voting together on specific issues.
Shows how group identity turns into political leverage. How does that idea of a vote bank affect politics in a community, do you think?
It has huge implications for representation, for how campaigns are run. Now, Srinivas also felt the traditional Varna model, that simple four-part caste system, was too simplistic. It distorted things.
So he proposed alternatives.
He talked about two other kinds of solidarity, vertical and horizontal. Let's start with vertical.
Okay, vertical solidarity.
This is about different castes within the same local area sharing common cultural stuff. Like a Brahmin and a Dalit in the same village might speak the same dialect, celebrate the same local festivals, share some beliefs. It's unity across caste lines, but within one place.
Got it. And horizontal solidarity.
That's the opposite in a way. It's members of the same caste sharing common rituals, beliefs, traditions, but across different regions, even different languages.
Like Brahmins in the south sharing traditions with Brahmins in the north.
Exactly. Despite the distance and language differences, there's a shared Sanskritic tradition, for instance. It's unity within the caste, but spanning different locations. Think about today, Which kind of solidarity, vertical or horizontal, seems stronger now, or more common?
Interesting question. Now, it's important we also acknowledge criticisms of Srinivas. No thinker is beyond critique, right?
Absolutely essential for a balanced view. Some scholars argue that his perspective, often coming from being a guest of the dominant caste, might have limited his view of the experiences of, say, lower castes like Dalits.
What was the specific concern?
The critique was that he might have downplayed the structure of violence, both real and symbolic, that sometimes enforced caste rules. That perhaps he focused more on harmony and cooperation.
And maybe missed how Dalits themselves saw the system or the coercion involved.
That was the argument. It really underscores why considering different perspectives, potential biases, is so crucial when studying any society.
A really vital point. Okay, now let's use these concepts from Srinivas. Let's bridge past and present with the Patidar community in Sundarana village, central Gujarat. We've got sources comparing them from the 1950s to 2013.
And this comparison shows a dramatic shift in values and aspirations. Back in the 50s, Patidars were successful farmers. Agriculture wasn't just profitable, it was respected, a dignified job.
But fast forward to 2013.
By 2013, even if farming was still making money, farmers were often seen as poor. Working the land just wasn't considered dignified anymore by many within the community.
So what became the new status symbols? And tell us about Manish Patel. How does his story show this change?
The new markers were clear. Get a job off the farm, move out of the village, and the biggest one, go overseas. Migrate. Manish Patel, 27. Educated Patidar, he kind of embodies this crisis. He tried to migrate but failed.
So what does he do?
He supervises the family land, but mostly spends his days doing time pass, hanging out, on his smartphone. He's single, facing huge pressure to marry. It's a real reflection of this shift in what success means.
So migration became almost a requirement for status.
Pretty much. It became a crucial rite of passage, even seen as a necessity to be a proper Patidar. But for many, it's also ridden with disappointment.
How so?
The village can become like a waiting room full of bored, often overqualified, underemployed young men like Manish, stuck. What kind of pressures do you think push young people to feel they have to migrate, even when it's so tough?
That's a heavy situation. And how did this focus on migration change how they viewed work and even where they lived?
It created totally new hierarchies. Patidars shifted away from manual farm labor that's now done by other castes towards work of the mind. Education became mainly a path to a non-manual job.
And then the highest status.
Self-employed business, but crucially not related to farming. And location-wise,
Where do they want to be?
out of the village.
Yeah.
Overseas was the ultimate goal. The U.S. was top prize, then Canada, Australia, New Zealand, maybe East Africa for those with fewer options.
But the reality was different.
Yeah, most from Sundarana managed only temporary or low-skilled migration, if they managed it at all. Many failed, like Manish. It shows this real tension between global dreams and local realities.
And this intense focus on migration had huge knock-on effects, especially for marriage, right? How did migration get tangled up with finding a spouse?
Totally intertwined. Migration became the yardstick for status. So a good marriage got redefined. It meant marrying someone with a foreign passport, or at least the prospect of one.
So local farmers were out of luck.
Pretty much. No Patidar woman apparently wanted to marry a farmer, even an educated one. This led straight to a major bride shortage for the men left in the village.
And why was there a shortage? What caused it?
Tragically, it connects back to historical practices like female infanticide and sex-selective abortions, often driven by the pressure of high dowries. This seriously skewed the sex ratio. In a non-district nearby, it was like 877 females per 1,000 males.
Wow. Any other factors?
Plus, the young Patidar women themselves are more educated now. They want to leave peasant life. They see many local men as undesirable if they don't have migration prospects.
We heard about Manish 3 years looking, rejected, even lying about a visa didn't work. But what's really striking is what some men are doing now. It's like they have to move down to move up in the marriage game.
Exactly. Some desperate men are now willing to pay bride price the opposite of receiving dowry. They're marrying widows or divorcees, people often stigmatized. And the marriage market is expanding to communities seen as lower.
Like who?
Specifically Adivasi, or tribal women from other regions.
How do those marriages work? What's it like for the Adivasi brides?
They usually involve brokers, dalals, and bride price payments. But for the bride, it's incredibly tough. Her Adivasi identity is often hidden. She has to undergo this radical transformation to become a Patidar woman, facing huge cultural pressure, often intense isolation.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
Think about Sangeeta's story. Educated, dreamed of going abroad, married an NRI non-resident Indian. Turned out he was a fraud and abuser. She divorced, came back totally disillusioned, said there was nothing so good about going abroad, but, still dreams of it. How does this intense focus on migration create all these new problems, these paradoxes, especially around marriage?
It's incredibly layered, and all this pressure seems to create widespread discontent, leading to some really paradoxical strategies. That time pass you mentioned, the idleness of guys like Manish.
It's not just about class anymore. It's seen as a mark of failure. Failure in a society that pushes this dream of migration but offers no clear way for many to actually get there.
And this frustration, it leads to blaming others.
Yeah, a strong narrative of victimization emerged among those left behind, blaming richer Patidars who got land through money lending, blaming Muslims even though there were a small, poor community there, and blaming lower castes because of India's reservation system, the affirmative action policy. Right. They claimed reservations blocked them from good education and jobs. Manish felt reservations stopped him from getting his MPhil degree.
So where does this grievance lead politically? This is the really surprising part. The Patidars, historically seen as successful entrepreneurs.
Since 2015, they've waged these huge public campaigns demanding to be reclassified as an other backward class, OBC.
Why? Why would a group seen as successful want OBC status, which gives access to reservations meant for disadvantaged groups?
It seems totally paradoxical, right? But it reflects the very real feeling of downward mobility among many Patidar youth in villages like Sundarana. They feel squeezed out. Essentially, they're saying, we need a share of the cake too in this super competitive environment. It just shows how social identity and economic reality can clash, how categories can become contested under pressure.
Okay, let's pull all this together. Let's recap this deep dive. We saw how M. and Srinivas gave us these crucial sociological tools, stressing that field view, seeing things on the ground, over just the book view.
Yeah, and his concepts like Sanskritization and Westernization are powerful lenses for seeing how cultures change and adapt. And ideas like dominant caste, vote bank, vertical and horizontal solidarity, they reveal those complex layers of power and connection.
Then the Patidar story brought it right up to date, a modern crisis of values where farming just isn't enough for status anymore.
And it showed how global migration has become this massive driver of social life, creating unexpected challenges, especially in marriage and identity.
So connecting those dots. The Patidar struggles with migration, marriage, even their politics. It all shows how Srinivas's ideas about social change, about power dynamics, are still incredibly relevant. They're still shaping society.
It shows change is rarely simple, rarely straightforward. That idea of unity in disunity someone described for Patidars decades ago. It still seems true. They're strengthening their caste identity in some ways while dissolving it in others, all at the same time, responding to these new pressures.
So what does this all tell us about society in general? Maybe that change isn't always linear, that the ways people adapt can be surprising, even contradictory.
Definitely forces us to rethink assumptions. What other kinds of paradoxes might be shaving societies around the world right now, just under the surface, waiting for us to see them?
Exactly. Keep asking those questions, keep looking for the connections, and keep diving deep.